first up is David, and I do want to really thank David and Isabel for talking, actually, because what they're talking about is not easy to, it's quite deep, actually. It's not easy to put into words fully, thoroughly. But David was unabashed. In fact, he was very grateful to be asked. David, I've been enjoying getting to know David over the last number of years. He's had a big, busy job in the city, and he's sort of gone forth from that. It's a great story if you get a chance to take him for coffee. But as well as that sort of evident, he's got a lot of capacity. He's a very, very capable man, and has worked, you know, in those sorts of tough conditions. But what's really delightful with David is he's got these sort of younger qualities as well, of kind of, he's got loads and loads of enthusiasm, loads and loads of interest, and a sense of wonder. It seems like that environment hasn't in any way sort of beaten that out of him, as it perhaps could beat some of us down. So yeah, I'm really looking forward actually to hearing David sharing his thoughts on this topic of why he asked for ordination. And David, I'll give you a wave at 9 minutes, just so that you can know that you've got a minute to round up. Okay, so over to David.
Okay. All right, well, thank you, Arthur. Hi, everybody. Thanks to the team for asking me to talk at Sangha night, and Arthur City's right. It's been a really wonderful opportunity to reflect on this a year after the event. A little background about me. I'm now 55 years old, but from as young as I can remember, I thought there was something wrong in the sort of ordinary, everyday human attitude towards life from as early as I can remember. I always seem to have been struck by the sort of privilege of conscious existence and the moments of utter beauty and wonder it can contain. And sad that this miracle can be sort of so unthinkingly reduced to a routine of sort of dull, self-absorbed, sometimes even sort of cynical, maybe even cruel mundanity. And I couldn't either really understand the aspiration and achievement the world prizes, material gain and social standing, egoism, when life so clearly ends in the loss of everything and the utter extinction of that beautiful miracle of consciousness. I'm from a working class family in the East End of London, and there wasn't much in my surroundings as I grew up to suggest I might be onto something. So with no other option and the world a really rather compelling authority, I set about conforming and did so fairly well. As Arthur City mentions, I had a really quite successful career in the City of London, wonderful, close, loving family, on the surface a quite enviable lifestyle. I even managed in the busyness of it all to bury my existential qualms for quite a long period of time. But the razor sharpness of life in its actual experience never left me. And in my 30s, some really deep misgivings over a life of unthinking conformity really came powerfully to the surface. Not coincidentally, at that time, began to read widely, really voraciously, literature, philosophy, poetry, religion, psychology, music, you name it. And I encountered minds in so many fields that reinforced my sense that there was indeed something, that there was much, much more to conscious existence than could be appreciated really fully conventionally. By 15 years ago, my meandering reading had brought me to Buddhism, which became more and more the focus. And like other subjects, the deeper I looked, the less need that I felt to look elsewhere. It encompassed everything else. And over the years, this interest formulated into something of a personal philosophy and a personal practice, and the growing conviction that I'd maybe found the way that would lead wherever it was I'd always suspected that I needed to go. In 2012, I left the city with the support of my tremendously understanding wife to try to find another freer, more joyful way of living. I found employment in the charity sector, which has been really liberating in many ways. My wife, who's not a Buddhist, and I have learned to live with less money. I have a job where fear and greed aren't the prime motivators, where I can experience other people's truer humanity. But these experiences just made it clearer to me that there remained something very much more undone. In summer 2016, I went along to the Cambridge Buddhist Centre It was pure luck, happening to be so close to my work on Mill Road when I Googled Buddhist Centre. I remember saying at the time, possibly slightly glibly, that it was to see what this third jewel was all about, not really believing it could be as important as the Buddha and the Dharma. But very quickly, I began to discover it's every bit as important. And not much more than a year later, I'd asked to become a Mitra. So the unfolding of my Dharma life has felt increasingly both natural and insistent. Practice has become a very regular, very cherished, necessary part of my life. So I'd resolved at the beginning of last year to create more time from work, in no small part to try to concentrate more on my spiritual life and to be more involved where I could at the centre and other activities. The resolution was finally realised last September, and after a very busy period of getting there, the space it provided, the sense of freedom and possibility led to an incredibly powerful experience in October last year at a week's retreat at Padmaloka, living in such closeness to other Buddhists, exploring ways in which Buddhism can transform ourselves and the world. It was the Sutra of Golden Light. Sadaraju, who's part of the team, actually was key speaker there. It had the Dharma very tangibly flood in, and that's how I came to ask for ordination. I woke up one morning at Padmaloka, halfway through the week's retreat, after an unusual night of troubled dreams, a kind of fog of barely comprehended fear, and realised I was going to ask for ordination. I hadn't actually thought that thought before, as far as I can remember. It hadn't really occurred as a possibility. But why did I ask for ordination? It's a subtly different question from how I came to. And the short answer, it occurs to me in thinking about this talk, is I don't really know. At least in the way we habitually use the word know, why the resolution was made. As I said, I woke up and understood I had to commit myself, that I was going to. Even in some sense, it already happened. The fitful dreams and the sense of strange misgivings and fear was because my rational mind was catching up. It was kind of horrified with the fact that a decision had been reached without including it. You hadn't even guessed at it. It's got a place of hitherto supremacy had been shown up as an illusion. Some deeper, more whole, I don't know, more real part of me actually calls the shots. And I look back at all the major turns of my life, actually seems to bear this out entirely. And when this richer part of oneself is nurtured and fed and given space, it can operate with a power and a certainty, the like of which I've never experienced. But the rational mind was then and has since been playing catch up, which is helpful at least when one's asked to give a talk on why one asked for ordination. So maybe here's some less Gnostic thoughts about what motivated that decision. If I rewind, I said I'd gone along to a Buddhist centre by act of Google. I'm very fortunate, the Buddhist centre, very fortunate that the Buddhist centre I went along to happened to be a Triratna one. I said earlier that throughout my life there have been minds and thinkers that have had a profound influence on my life, whose consciousness has spoken powerfully to mine about consciousness. Well, if I'd had no previous experience of Buddhism, I know that Sanghadevi would have been one such. And as my Dharma life's unfolded, the part played by Bhante has become increasingly clear, increasingly forceful. I remember very early in my time with the Cambridge Centre listening to Bhante's lecture series on the Buddha's Noble Eightfold Path. It was the first time, in fact, I'd heard his very singular voice and style, and I particularly remember being struck by his observation that for the vast majority of us, our human life does not have a single overarching purpose. We find it difficult to conceive of our existence amounting to anything meaningful in the grand scale of things because we're so scattered. Our attention and aims heading off in so many different directions with not one common thread of reason or motivation. And I was struck then, such an obvious truth, but one that needed to be pointed out to me to begin to comprehend the really huge ramifications. But as my Dharma life has unfolded as the only single overarching purpose I can possibly imagine in a human life, it must take its place at the very center of that life and the world as I see it, at the center of my every consideration about my life and the world. Nothing else, no matter how inspiring I might find it, can compete. If I were to follow one interest and one only of the many passions I've had, something in music or art or writing or philosophy or politics, and make that the center of my life, I just can't see how it could address the great majority, the vast majority of unsatisfied problems that conscious life presents us. And as I've touched on already, wonderfully in Bhante's presentation, the Dharma doesn't exist in opposition to such pursuits at all. It encompasses them all in greater fullness than any have in isolation. So to resolve to make one's life the subject of and to commit to this one overarching purpose, well, when you begin to see the magnitude of the undertaking, it feels to me like a great, and dare I say it, heroic quest, and I dare being a wild old romantic. And also because Bantu, in writing of the journey to ordination, mentions epic journeys of myth and history, journeys through by land and sea, through worlds and even universes, because they're all journeys into a great unknown, are all fraught with unknown danger and great uncertainty into territory beyond imagining, and all possess a significance that can't really be exhausted by any rational analysis or description of them. And if it's a quest, aren't we spurred to it by really heroic reasons? Because the world, its beauty and wonder notwithstanding, is so clearly a sphere of suffering. It's plainer now than ever. And to turn one's whole attention and life towards the Dharma, to try to change the troubled world in whatever way we can, with the Buddha's astonishing vision as our guide, to transcend ourselves, to love others as fully as he teaches, and for our own sakes. Well, for me, it's the most appropriate response to finding myself briefly the subject of this miracle of conscious existence. And if we're so decided paradoxically and wonderfully, we don't have to make this journey, which is, even though it's a journey into the very depths of ourselves on our own, there's this movement created by Bhante Sangha, made up of like-minded people who seek to change the world, to change themselves, and support as much as they can the same effort in each other, with access to great spiritual friendship and to share and discuss our experiences, our challenges, our difficulties, our fears and our joys and excitement. And I've no doubt that my life's need to embrace this single overarching purpose, which was intuited before it was ever really seen, which has grown and grown the more attention I've given it, until it sees me with that barely comprehended need to act, and act more radically than I've ever done before. It just can't be taken without committing myself as full as I'm able. And luckily for me, with Triratna, in following the ordination training, there's a route I can follow, not only practically to assist me in by going for refuge as fully as I can, but the willing further increase that desire. I've already experienced it, further fuel that inspiration, and as I've already experienced, actually expand my capacity to do so. Thank you very much.
Thanks very much, David. Really wonderful sort of evocation. Not an easy thing to do, but yeah, that image that you left us with of a life with a center, a purpose to it, and the rest of our self, our interests kind of cohering around that. Yeah, a wonderful image. Thank you very, very much. I'm going to hand over to Sunetri, who's going to introduce Isabelle a little bit.
So good evening, everyone. Lovely to be here on Sangha night with you all. Yes, and I'm just very delighted to be able to introduce Isabelle Felix to you this evening. Isabelle and I go back probably around 15 years, so it's quite a long time. And it's just been very delightful to get to know Isabelle in many different sort of ways, really. But a lot of the qualities that she has are, well, she's just a very lovely, kind, warm-hearted woman. And she cares extremely about people, actually. I mean, that's one of the first things that I was struck by her, was that she was constantly asking about me and how I was and my family and what have you. And one of the things that we share is that we're both we've been sort of single parents. So that's been a nice sort of connection that we've had. She's an immensely capable woman. She's very steadfast, she's reliable, she keeps to her word, she's resilient, she's very straightforward. And I've just loved, particularly I think since she actually asked for ordination, just her commitment to the Dharma and the commitment to getting to know herself on deeper and deeper levels. Have just been really interesting to see. And particularly the one thing with Isabelle is you can't push Isabelle. She takes her time, which is really great. So she takes her time, she thinks a lot about things, and only then, when she feels sure about it, that's when she'll, I don't know, either make changes or whatever. But I really, really admire that in her, and I love that in her, actually. Yeah, so yeah, there's lots of other things I could say about her, but I'd like to also just hear about her journey. So it's going to be really interesting to hear that. Hello, my dear.
Thank you very much, Sunitri. That was a very lovely introduction.
You're welcome.
So yeah, it was really interesting, and thank you very much for giving me this opportunity to think about why I asked for ordination. And yeah, I thought that, yeah, my journey leading to asking for ordination explains a lot of the why. So looking back, I have the sense that asking for ordination is the result of turning points and counters which have led to this moment. I can see two main streams which I believe have guided me to this point. So there's an intuitive insight of something beyond myself, and also people who have inspired me, guided me, and have often seen some potential in me I couldn't see at the time. So being French, I was raised as a Catholic, although my parents were not strong believers. And it was more because it was the norm. And I liked going to church because I liked the atmosphere in it, and also because I liked singing. But I couldn't feel a heart connection. And as I said, I can remember having this intuitive insight at quite a young age of something else, but I couldn't really grasp what it was for quite a long time. Also as a teenager and a young adult, I was often feeling disappointed in my relationships with my friends and family because I wanted something deeper and truer, but they didn't. So I really came to believe I was not normal, and I thought I was adopted by my family because I felt so different. And at times it could be quite painful, and I also felt lonely. I just couldn't understand why people were not interested in a deeper and truer relationship. And around my mid-20s, so I met Jayamuni, so it was still in France, who was Thierry at the time, and we started to develop a different friendship and the type of friendship I was really longing for. And he then moved to Cambridge, met the Dharma and became a Buddhist. And at the same time, I moved to Honduras, and I met myself in a deeper way, because that's also what it does to you when you live in a very different culture. It pushes you beyond yourself. You are at the same time nothing and anything. And yeah, Jayamuni came often to visit me in Honduras, and I remember spending hours talking about his discovery about Dharma. And I can see that, the seed was planted, and I think I prefer to see it and believe that the seed was already there, and it just started to grow because it received some nourishment, nutrients that it needed. And a few years later, so I moved to Cambridge with my young daughter, and not because I wanted to be a Buddhist, but just because I wanted to improve my English. And Jayamuni booked a meditation class for me without asking me if I wanted to, but because he saw some potential in me. And during this class, I had this spontaneous connection with someone who was supporting the class. Amarashwada, who was Bianca at the time. So it was another true friend along my way to guide me further on the path to ordination and the Dharma. And through her, and also thanks to Tejashwini, so I had the opportunity to work at the Buddhist trading company called Windhorse for nearly 11 years. So finally, I was with people who wanted to have a deeper and truer relationship. But to be honest, it was also very scary. So I discovered that working in a Buddhist environment was not plain sailing. All the members were not perfect, and quite a lot of people working there were in their ordination process, but the journey to ordination looked quite bumpy and painful at times. But at the same time, I witnessed good friends growing, blossoming, and transforming during their journey. And part of me longed for it, but my head was telling me another story than my heart. This was not for me. I had enough intensity in my life with raising a young daughter by myself. But I think underneath there was this underlying story, which was, I think, like I believed I was not enough and I was not worth it. So I needed some people to nudge me in the right direction. And I particularly remember Tejashwini, so her again, telling me after an event at the center that it was probably time to think to the next step, meaning by that becoming a Mitra. I think it kind of shows that, yeah, it takes me time to make a decision, as Sunetri mentioned. And becoming a Mitra was another significant turning point because it really represented an engagement in living my life a certain way. And I started Mitra study and managed to go to some retreats, which was not always easy because of being a single mom with a young daughter. I had my first solitary retreat and it was for 2 weeks and I really loved it. And I deepened my connections and friendships in the Sangha. And I asked a lot of questions, mainly to myself, to be sure this was what I wanted to engage with. I was aware of the level of commitment it required and also of its challenges. So a couple of years later, after becoming a Mitra, I reached the point I was kind of, exploring, asking for ordination. And I asked a few people I trusted within the Sangha if they could see me becoming an order member and why. And at the time, I thought it was maybe due to doubts and resistances and trying to be rational. But I can see also that some of it was due to my usual story of not feeling I was good enough and not worth it and not belonging. So is why I was asking other people in a way. I needed others to trust in my potential before I was able to do it myself. So I followed my heart and not my head and asked for ordination, which was 5 years ago. And Tejashwini, once again, was the person to support me in that important step. And for me, there was and there's still an element of faith, of Shraddha, in deciding to ask for ordination because a lot of it is unknown. I was ready to take the jump and embrace what was coming and bumps and transformation. There was also a deep sense that the way I was and how I connected with people had a deep effect on me and on others as well. My time at Windhorse and my friendships showed me it wasn't going to be plain sailing, but I trusted what I'd witnessed with my friends and the potential others could see in me and what my heart was telling me. asking for ordination was making the commitment of living my life a certain way, going for refuge in the three jewel for the rest of my life. And I said at the beginning that this decision was the results of a series of events and turning points in my life, and people guiding me, inspiring me, and supporting me. But with more perspective, I have kind of the strong sense that the three jewels guided me to them through my life until I found them, that it just didn't happen by chance. And there's a good example that I wanted to share with you. Is like 5 years ago, when the company Windhorse closed down. So I chose a Buddha statue to put on my shrine. And I didn't know at the time which figure it was. And also I felt that I needed to add a Vajra. And when I started to build up the shrine, I had really a strong sense that I needed to put something dark, a profound blue background. And I discovered later on that all these different elements were related to Akshobhya. And I had the sense, and I'm from a scientific background, so I was not talking to my rational side, but I really had a sense that, in fact, I didn't choose Akshobhya, and that Akshobhya chose me. And I still have this very strong heart connection with this Buddha. So, what I just would like to add to it is that since I've asked for ordination and I've started a GFR group with my dear Dharmic sisters, so I've been going to GFR retreats. I've been developing deep, true and beautiful friendships with peers and other members. I've been supporting classes, and this has I will manage to say it. It has opened doors I didn't expect when I first asked for ordination. And what I feel in my heart today is like I'm finding my way home, and a home that can be shared with a lot of people and can shelter a lot of people. Thank you.
Many thanks, Isabelle. Really lovely talk, very, very moving. Two very, very good talks, communicating so much actually. So thanks very, very much to both of you for that. And now we're going to hand over to Sanghadevi, who's going to talk, having heard those two talks, about what is ordination.
Yes, hello everybody. Well, thank you to David and Isabelle. I've really enjoyed listening to you both, and very, very honest. So we've had these two really beautiful, very personal talks, and it's a bit of an adjustment. This is going to be a bit different. It's not so obviously personal. I mean, obviously I am speaking from having been in the order a long time, but I'm not going to be talking about my own personal journey in the order. I kind of read the invitation to I understood my brief to be to talk a bit about what ordination means, bearing in mind there may be people in the audience who are very new to Buddhism or new to Triratna. I don't know tonight, that may or may not be the case, but for those of you that have got a lot of experience, please bear with the fact that this is geared to anybody and doesn't assume a great deal of knowledge of Triratna or even of Buddhism necessarily. So, without further ado, ordination means aligning oneself with other human beings who share our deepest values. And those values are described in the Buddhist tradition as jewels, jewels being beautiful, valuable, and precious. So the first jewel is the Buddha jewel, the ideal of human enlightenment. So this is the jewel that points to the fact that all human beings, all of us, have the capacity to become enlightened, to to realize our full potential in the way that the Buddha did. And that full potential is sometimes described as a state of compassion, of wisdom, of limitless energy, being completely free of greed, hatred, and delusion. Delusion in the sense of being deluded about the way things are. And the second jewel is the Dharma. So this is the truth which the Buddha realized. It's also all the methods and teachings that are in harmony with that truth and which help us to realize that truth if we put those teachings and practices, if we actually work out how to practice them in our own life. And then the Sangha jewel is the spiritual community, the spiritual friendship amongst those who've been following the path for longer than we have. Particularly the Sangha jewel as a refuge are all those people who've realized the truth that the Buddha himself realized, at least to some degree, and who are what are called irreversible on the path to enlightenment. They've transformed themselves to such a degree that they can't possibly ever forget about the possibility of full enlightenment. So at the time of our ordination into the Triratna order, we undergo a ceremony. We undergo two ceremonies, a private ceremony and a public ceremony. And these are rituals that we share with the people that are conducting the ordinations. And there may be others on the same retreat as us who are also undergoing similar rituals. And these rituals are both a recognition of how far we've already come in our practice of the Dharma. They're a recognition of the depth to which we've already taken our Dharma practice in our personal life. But it's also a public statement of our commitment, our formal commitment to keep on practicing the Dharma. We're sort of coming out fully into the open and nailing our colours to the mast and saying, yes, we really do want to go the whole way. We really do want to do our utmost best to discover and embody increasingly what the Buddha discovered and embodied. And we want to do that in fellowship with others who are similarly committed. So ordination means that we've recognized that Dharma practice offers us the means whereby we'll realize our deepest heart wish. It means that we sense, we intuit, we know that what the Buddha achieved all those hundreds, thousands of years ago in India points the way to what is possible for each and every human being to achieve. It means we've realized to some degree that we're all spiritual beings with a spiritual destiny, that all living beings have a spiritual destiny. And within that, human beings have the best possible conditions, being human, to fulfill that spiritual destiny, which far surpasses the satisfaction and enjoyment which we'll gain through material success alone. I mean, David talked a lot about that. So yes, we can have material success. There's nothing wrong with material success. But actually, it's the realization that this just is not enough. It can never be enough. That we're here for something, a bigger project than that. So it means we've been practicing the Dharma long enough to know in direct experience that the methods and teachings which have come down to us in the Buddhist tradition actually work. And in particular, we've been practicing for long enough within the Triratna tradition to have confidence that the particular methods and teachings which are offered through Triratna work. That is to say, if we put them into practice, if we apply them appropriately, they do actually bring about change in us. And we've actually been doing this for long enough to have discovered that yes, we're definitely benefiting from applying these practices in our life. We're definitely deepening. We're definitely, gradually changing. We can see that in ourselves. We can feel that in ourselves. And we want to keep on learning. We want to keep on growing. We want to keep on discovering. And we recognize that, that the Triratna community and order offer us an opportunity of support and encouragement and guidance and challenge, that's been mentioned as well, to continue on that journey. So all these things are involved in what it means to be ordained, to join the order. It means we recognize that spiritual friendship with others, similarly engaged in Dharma practice, is integral to our experience of beneficial change in ourselves. It's not an optional extra. We've come to recognize that actually we've been growing with other people. We've been growing alongside other people. We've been learning about the Dharma in study groups with other people, in discussion groups with other people. We've been maybe working with other people sometimes in the Sangha, sharing in projects together. We've been going on retreats together. And all these different ways of being with others have actually been helping us, as well as us helping them. And we're recognizing that. So we're recognizing that friendship with those who share the same values as us, the same values that are embodied in the three jewels, is a pretty essential component of the conditions we need to support our continuing journey on the path to full awakening. Or in the image that David threw in, the sort of quest, that we're on this quest, but there are many other people on this quest as well. And we're more likely to reach our goal if we help each other on this quest, because it's a difficult and arduous journey. It's not all roses, as they say. Ordination in Triratna means stepping into a shared myth, embodied in a particular archetype of compassion, which has come down to us from the Buddhist tradition. This archetype is depicted as a two-legged standing figure, dressed in colourful garments, with 11 heads and 1,000 arms, which, if one's not come across this image before, might seem rather strange. So the 11 heads are looking in all directions of space. So it points to the fact that this figure, this symbol, has panoramic awareness. There's nothing limited or narrow or blinkered in the vision of this figure. And the central pair of hands of this figure are held to the heart. And this symbolizes the enlightenment potential of all beings. So the hands are like a lotus bud that grows up out of the mud at the bottom of the lake. And the lotus bud grows up through the water. The stalk grows up through the water. And however murky and dirty that water is, the bud stays closed through that journey. But once the stalk emerges from above the water into this new element of air, of sky, of space, the bud opens to reveal a beautiful, pristine lotus flower. And in the same way, human beings are like this. This is the vision that the Buddha himself had. He talked about this. You can find this story in the scriptures of how he saw human beings like these closed buds, but with this possibility of growing up out of sometimes extremely difficult conditions, great suffering, great pain, many difficulties, and yet there is this potential. Isabelle talked about the seed, liking to think that this seed was already there. Well, yes, that's what this image is. We all have this seed potential, and it needs encouragement. And also all the other arms of the figure are reaching out in all these different directions, and they all hold different implements. So the different implements are about all the different ways in which beings need help, need aid. So this is what happens when we join the order. We're sort of putting ourselves into the body of the order and becoming one of the hands, one of the arms of Avalokiteshvara. This is what the order aspires to become a true figure of compassion, a true force of good in the world. And there's a recognition that actually whatever our skills, whatever our abilities, whatever our talents, if we join forces with other people and share with other people on the basis of the values of the three jewels, then the chances are we'll be able to have a much bigger impact on benefiting other beings who are less fortunate, who have an interest, who may have an interest in the Dharma, who would have an interest in the Dharma if we had the skills and abilities to know how to reach them and meet them in the needs they have in the immediate present. Someone may need food, they may need shelter, they may need encouragement, they may need all sorts of things. But between us, we can offer anything and everything. We're not, of course, the only force for good in the world, but this is what the order aspires to be a particular locus of energy and compassionate activity. So this is what we're kind of stepping into, and there's a training process to do this. I think this has been heard of, that once we ask for ordination, we enter into a training process to join the order, and there are retreats and study groups and various other things offered to anyone who's asked for ordination. And of course, it's true that we can't just join the order on our own terms. There is this process where our joining the order depends on the order members who've got to know us coming to their own sense that they feel that, yes, your going for refuge resonates with my going for refuge. Your sense of what it is to join the order resonates with my sense of what the order is. So there is this communication that needs to happen between the person who wishes to join the order and those who are already in the order. But that communication comes down to you, the person who's asked. So there's no question of being passive. It's like the person who's asked to join the order has to do the footwork. We've all had to do the footwork. We all have to do the footwork ourselves. It's only us who can work on our own minds, work on our own mental states, work on our own emotional reactions, work on our own conditioning. We can learn from others, but we have to do that footwork ourselves. And it's also down to us to communicate what really matters to us. It's only us who can communicate to other people what going for refuge really means to us. And that gets communicated in lots of different ways and through lots of different media. It's not just verbal communication, it's how we move through the world. It's what we do, how we move physically, what we do physically, how we give of ourselves, what goes on in our mind. There's lots of different ways in which we can communicate the importance of going for refuge in our lives. And that's what comes across in our communication with the order members who are getting to know us, with the people we're building friendships, because we're building friendship into the order. The order is a network of friendship. And that's what we need to do as part of joining this order, because it's integral to the order, to have friends in the order, to be friends with one another in the order, and to work together for the benefit of all beings. So I'm not going to say any more now. That's hopefully between what I've said and what our friends Isabelle and David have said, and everything else you already know, if you already know quite a lot. We've probably got plenty to well, explore. If we've got any questions or anything we'd like to discuss or explore, we can have some time to do that now. I don't know how it's going to work, if someone else is going to field this.
Yeah, I can field the questions for you, Sanghadevi, but just to say thank you very, very much for that. Very, very beautiful, very thorough, and covered so much ground. It was really, really lovely to hear, actually, very uplifting. So thank you very much for that.